What would you do if the woman everyone rejected turned out to be the one who changed your life forever? Ethan never believed in miracles anymore. He was just a single dad, dragging himself through another long night shift at the hospital, tired, lonely, and still haunted by the loss of his wife. Life had stopped being kind to him a long time ago. The only reason he still smiled was his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, his sunshine in a world that had gone gray. Every morning, before he left for work, Lily had this habit of giving him something small. A cookie, a little drawing, a note that said, "You're my hero, Daddy." But that morning, she gave him something different, a small bunch of daisies, tied together with a ribbon. "Give these to someone who looks sad," she said, her tiny voice full of innocence. "Maybe they just forgot that they're still loved." Ethan chuckled, kissed her forehead, and tucked the daisies into his pocket. He didn't know it yet, but those flowers were about to change everything. The hospital halls were quiet that night, the kind of silence that makes you feel even more alone. Ethan pushed his medication cart down the corridor, half asleep on his feet. When he reached room 207, he checked the name on the chart, and froze. The name sounded familiar. Amelia Knight. He knocked lightly and stepped in. A woman sat by the window, pale and still, her face turned toward the rain outside. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. He knew that face, not from the hospital, but from TV screens and newspaper headlines. Amelia Knight. The beautiful, young millionaire bride who had it all, until the car crash that left her paralyzed just days before her wedding. Her fiancé disappeared, her friends vanished, and the world moved on. Everyone forgot her. Everyone, except the man now standing in her room. "Good evening, Miss Knight," Ethan said quietly. "I brought your medicine." She didn't even glance his way. "Just leave it," she whispered coldly. Ethan placed the tray down, but instead of leaving, he pulled out the daisies from his pocket and set them beside her. "These are from my daughter," he said gently. "She says flowers can fix sadness." Amelia finally turned her head, her voice sharp. "You think flowers can fix paralysis?" Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe not your legs," he said softly, "but maybe your heart." For the first time in months, someone had spoken to her without pity. No sympathy. No fake comfort, just honesty. And even though she looked away, Ethan saw it, the faintest flicker in her eyes. A spark. He didn't know why, but something inside him told him not to leave. Not this time. Because sometimes, life brings two broken people together, not by chance, but because they're meant to fix each other. Ethan couldn't believe who he was looking at. The woman sitting by the window, pale, silent, almost lifeless, wasn't just any patient. It was Amelia Knight. Yeah, that Amelia Knight, the woman everyone once called the perfect bride. Rich, famous, beautiful. Her wedding had been all over the news. Until that one accident that destroyed everything. A car crash just days before she was supposed to say, "I do." She woke up paralyzed. Her fiancé disappeared. The media milked her tragedy, people cried for a week, and then, they all forgot her. Now, she sat in that hospital room, staring out the window like life had already ended. Ethan stood there quietly with her medicine tray, unsure what to say. "Good evening, Miss Knight," he said softly. She didn't move. Didn't even look at him. "Just leave it," she said, her voice flat and cold. He could have turned around and left like everyone else. But something about her, that empty, tired look, stopped him. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the little bunch of daisies Lily had given him that morning. He placed them beside her tray. "These are from my daughter," he said gently. "She told me to give them to someone who looks sad. She says flowers can fix sadness." For a moment, Amelia's eyes flicked toward the flowers. Her expression stayed sharp. "You think flowers can fix paralysis?" she asked, her tone dripping with bitterness. Ethan didn't flinch. He gave a faint smile. "Maybe not your legs," he said quietly, "but maybe your heart." That made her pause. Just for a second. The coldness in her eyes softened, barely, but it was there. A tiny spark, buried deep under months of pain. She turned away again, pretending she hadn't heard him. But the truth. His words had already gotten through. And Ethan didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness, that single bunch of daisies, had just changed the course of both their lives forever. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan kept stopping by room 207. It wasn't part of his job anymore, it was something he wanted to do. Every morning before work, Lily would hand him a little folded note. Sometimes it said, "You are brave." Other times, "Don't forget to smile." He'd place those notes on Amelia's bedside table along with her medicine. At first, she didn't say much. Just the usual short answers, yes, no, thank you. But slowly, the silence between them began to fade. One evening, as the rain tapped against the glass, she spoke without looking at him. "Do you ever feel like everyone's moved on but you haven't?" Ethan looked at her gently. "Every day," he said. That broke something in her. The next day, she told him about her art, the paintings she never finished, the dresses she never got to wear, the life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. She admitted how she hated the word strong, because people said it when they didn't know what else to say. She confessed she was scared, not of dying, but of being forgotten. Ethan didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened, really listened, and somehow that meant more than all the sympathy in the world. Outside their small corner of quiet, the whispers had already started. "That's the broken bride. And he's the foolish nurse wasting his time." People laughed behind their backs. But Ethan didn't care. He'd seen something in her eyes worth showing up for. And so, every single day he did. No matter how tired he was, no matter how long his shifts ran, he always made it to room 207, even if it was just to say, "Hey, Lily drew something for you again." One morning, when he pushed open the door, he froze. Amelia was already waiting, hair brushed, eyes bright, looking straight at the door. And when she saw him, she smiled. Just once. Soft and small but real. For Ethan, it was everything. Because sometimes, the smallest smile can heal more than medicine ever could. Days passed, and something quietly began to change. Room 207, once cold and lifeless, started to feel alive again. Ethan's visits weren't just part of his shift anymore. They became something both of them looked forward to. They'd talk about random things, Lily's funny stories, the weird hospital food, or that one patient who snored so loud the nurses thought there was an alarm going off. Sometimes, they didn't even talk. They'd just sit there, sharing the kind of silence that felt peaceful instead of painful. And little by little, Amelia started to smile again. Not forced. Not polite. Real smiles, the kind that reach your eyes. Soon, she decided to start physical therapy again. It wasn't easy. Every movement hurt. Every step felt like climbing a mountain she'd fallen from. But Ethan was always there, cheering her on with that same calm, steady voice. "Come on, Amelia. You've got this." Even when she could barely move a toe, he'd grin like she'd just won a marathon. At first, she thought he was just being nice. But the more he showed up, the more she realized he actually meant it. He saw her as more than a patient. More than a headline. He saw her. One morning, after therapy, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. The same face she used to hate. The one she thought had lost everything. But this time, she didn't look away. She saw a woman still standing, still fighting. "Funny," she murmured, glancing at Ethan, "how one stranger's kindness can make you believe in yourself again." He smiled gently. "I'm not doing anything special." She frowned. "Then why do you care so much?" For a second, he went quiet. Then he said softly, "Because someone once cared for me when I lost everything. Now it's my turn." Amelia looked away quickly, pretending to focus on the window. But inside, something broke, and something new started to grow. For months, she had felt empty, like her story was already over. But now, for the first time in forever, she didn't want it to end. She wanted to keep going. She wanted to live again. It happened slowly, so slowly that neither of them noticed when kindness started turning into something deeper. Ethan found himself thinking about Amelia even when he wasn't at work. He'd be cooking dinner or tucking Lily into bed, and she'd pop into his mind, the way she smiled when she finally lifted her hand during therapy, or how her voice softened when she talked about her old paintings. He told himself it was just concern. But he knew it wasn't. It was something else, something warm, something dangerous, something real. And he wasn't the only one who noticed. One morning, Lily looked up from her cereal and said with a grin, "Daddy, you smile more when Miss Amelia's around." Ethan froze, mid-bite, and laughed awkwardly. "Do I?" Lily nodded confidently. "You should marry her so she never feels sad again." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head, but her innocent words lingered all day. That afternoon, when he entered Amelia's room, she was trying to sketch again, a shaky drawing of a flower in a notebook. When he complimented it, she laughed, a real laugh, light and unguarded. The sound filled the quiet corridor, and for a moment, the whole world felt brighter. Nurses passing by stopped to look. Even they hadn't heard her laugh in months. But as quickly as it came, that happiness began to attract whispers. People started talking. The same people who'd once pitied her now gossiped behind her back. "She's using him for attention. That poor guy's wasting his time. Doesn't he know who she used to be?" Ethan ignored them all. He didn't care. But Amelia did. Every word hit her like a sting. She'd been humiliated by the world once already. She couldn't bear to be its gossip again. That night, when Ethan came by after his shift, she was different. Colder. Distant. He smiled softly. "Hey, I brought you Lily's new drawing." She cut him off sharply. "Maybe you should stop visiting me, Ethan." He froze. "What? Why?" Her eyes were glassy but firm. "People are talking. I don't want to be your charity case." Ethan stared at her, speechless, but she looked away, her jaw tight, fighting the pain in her chest. For the first time since they met, Ethan walked out of room 207 without saying a word. And for the first time since the accident, Amelia felt truly alone again. Ethan didn't argue that night. He just nodded quietly, trying to hide the hurt in his eyes, and walked out of room 207. For the first time since they met, the door closed without a single goodbye. He told himself he was doing the right thing, giving her space, respecting her wishes. But every time he passed that hallway, his chest tightened. His hands would slow down near her door, his heart hoping she'd call out. She never did. Days turned into weeks. No visits. No laughter. No daisies left on her bedside. Just silence, heavy, cold, and deafening. And if Ethan's world felt empty, Amelia's was worse. The quiet in that room grew louder every day. The mornings felt longer, the nights unbearable. She'd stare at the empty chair beside her bed, the one Ethan always used, and whisper to herself, "He's not coming back, is he?" Sometimes, she thought bitterly, you don't realize someone healed you until they're gone. One afternoon, she couldn't take it anymore. She stopped a nurse who was checking her for. "Where's Ethan?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. The nurse hesitated, then sighed. "He's been working double shifts again. His daughter, Lily, she's scheduled for surgery next week. He's trying to cover the costs." Amelia froze. "Surgery?" "Yeah," the nurse said softly. "He doesn't talk about it much. He just works. Day and night." As the nurse walked away, Amelia sat in silence, her heart pounding. She had pushed away the only person who had ever shown her real kindness. And now, he was out there breaking himself to help his little girl. Guilt hit her like a wave, sharp and heavy. For the first time in months, she felt something stronger than fear. Determination. Her therapist found her later that day, gripping the handles of her wheelchair, her arms trembling. "What are you doing?" he asked. Her voice was shaky but fierce. "I'm done sitting here. If he can fight every day for everyone else, then it's my turn to fight for him." And with that, Amelia did something she hadn't done in months. She moved. Not just her body, but her heart, too. Amelia woke up the next morning with a fire in her chest, the kind she hadn't felt in a long, long time. She was done being the woman who waited for life to happen. Ethan had fought for her when she'd given up on herself. Now it was her turn to fight back. She told her therapist, "No more easy sessions. Push me harder." And he did. The pain was unbearable. Every stretch burned. Every movement made her want to scream. But she didn't stop. Not this time. With every breath, she kept reminding herself, if Ethan can fight every single day for others, I can fight one more day for myself. Some days, She fell apart in tears. But the next morning, she got up again. Because that's what his kindness had taught her. Real strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and still choosing to keep going. One night, she sat by the window with a paintbrush in her trembling hand. She hadn't painted since the accident, but something in her said, try. So she did. Her hands shook. Colors blurred. But for the first time in months, she felt alive again. Then she wrote him a letter, simple, raw, and straight from the heart. You once told me flowers can fix sadness. You were right. You fixed mine. Thank you for giving me back my reason to live. She left it on her bedside table, hoping he'd see it one day. 3 days later, the door opened quietly. Ethan stood there, nervous, unsure if he should even walk in. But when he did, his breath caught in his throat. Amelia wasn't sitting in her wheelchair anymore. She was standing, shaky, holding onto the support bars, her legs trembling, but her smile steady. He froze, unable to speak. Amelia looked at him through tears, breathing hard but glowing with pride. I told you your flowers might work after all, she whispered with a weak laugh. Ethan's eyes filled instantly. He wanted to say something, anything, but no words came out. Because right in front of him stood a woman the world had written off, now standing tall, proving everyone wrong. And in that moment, both of them knew, those daisies hadn't just healed her. They'd brought both their hearts back to life. Love doesn't need perfection, it just needs courage. That thought kept echoing in Ethan's mind for days. He tried to ignore it, to convince himself that what he felt for Amelia was just gratitude, maybe admiration. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was in love with her. Not because she needed saving, but because she had saved him. Every moment he'd spent with her, every laugh, every word, every quiet smile, had brought color back into a life he thought was done with happiness. She wasn't a patient anymore. She was his reason to hope again. One bright afternoon, Ethan found her sitting in the hospital garden, the same place where, months ago, she'd only stared at the flowers in silence. Now, she was painting them. He walked toward her slowly, heart pounding so hard he could hear it. Amelia looked up, surprised to see him there, and smiled. You came. I never really left, he said softly. Before she could respond, he took a deep breath, knelt beside her wheelchair, and held her trembling hands in his. Amelia, he began, his voice unsteady, you don't need to walk to stand tall beside me. I love you for your strength, not your scars. For your courage, not your past. The garden went silent. Nurses nearby stopped what they were doing. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then, out of nowhere, Lily came running across the path, her little voice cutting through the stillness. Say yes. Please, Miss Amelia, say yes. Amelia's breath hitched. Her eyes filled instantly. This couldn't be real. No one had ever chosen her after the fall. Not like this. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered, Ethan, are you sure you want this life? I can't give you what others can. He looked straight into her eyes, his voice soft but certain. You already gave me more than anyone ever could. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. In that moment, every wall she'd built around her heart started to crumble. The world had once called her broken. But here she was, being loved, completely, without pity or conditions. And for the first time, she wasn't scared of being loved. She was scared of losing it. The garden where it all began looked different that day. Brighter, alive, almost magical. The same place that once held silence and pain now shimmered with laughter, flowers, and fairy lights. It was small, simple, and perfect. Ethan stood at the end of the aisle, his heart pounding, while Lily, wearing a little white dress, clutched a tiny bunch of daisies, the same flowers that had started it all. Amelia took a deep breath at the other end of the garden. Her therapist stood beside her, gently holding her arm for support. The air was thick with emotion. No music, no grand entrance, just quiet courage and love. Ready, her therapist whispered. Amelia nodded. Her legs trembled, but her heart didn't. Sometimes, she thought, the miracle isn't walking again, it's finding someone who never left your side. She took one step. The crowd gasped. Then another. Her body shook with effort, but her smile never faded. Ethan's eyes were already wet. He didn't move toward her. He wanted her to take those steps on her own. When she finally reached him, tears were streaming down her face. She looked up at him and whispered, "You made me believe in miracles." He smiled, brushing away her tears. "No, Amelia. You were the miracle all along." Lily cheered and ran forward to hug them both, her little daisies crushed between their hands. As the sun dipped and the fairy lights flickered above them, Ethan and Amelia shared their first dance, slow, shaky, and beautiful. There were no cameras, no fancy decorations, just three hearts that had found home in each other. Because sometimes, the world's definition of perfect isn't what matters. It's love that chooses you when no one else will. And as the night grew still, Ethan whispered the words that would stay with everyone there. Sometimes, the people the world rejects are the ones who teach us what real love means.